Tadyuktamakhilam vastu vyavaharastadhanvitaha tasmat sarvagatam brahma kshire sarpirivakhile. Tadyuktamakhilam vastu vyavaharastadhanvitaha tasmat sarvagatam brahma kshire sarpirivakhile. All objects are united with that is the Brahman. All actions are possible because of that. Tasmat. Therefore, Brahman permeates everything just as butter pervades milk. Kshire sarpiri akhile. It's a very, very famous metaphor, a famous comparison. So all objects are united with that Brahman. All actions rest upon that. You know, he has been continuously been drilling into our minds the fundamental truth that Brahman is the substratum, Brahman is the core, Brahman is responsible for everything. It's because of Brahman everything happens. Now here he says all objects are united with Brahman, which means self is the core. Everything is strung to Brahman. All actions rest upon that. Brahman permeates everything. If you say Brahman is there everywhere, if we say Brahman is in everything, in every object, in every perception, in every experience, there is God, there's Brahman, then you may ask me, sir, how is it that we are missing Brahman if it's everywhere? To which he quickly clarifies that statement, says, even though Brahman is all pervading, you're missing it is because it's like butter in milk. Every drop of milk has that cream or butter, but you and I don't see the butter, do we? Exactly the same way, Brahman is there as a substratum, as that which is responsible for everything. If my finger is moving up and down, Brahman is responsible for that movement. Do I realize that as I'm moving the finger up and down, the Brahman is responsible for this? All actions rest on Brahman, but I don't realize it because I'm carried away with the action. But he says action is backed by Brahman. It is there, just like butter pervades milk. A very, very famous metaphor, a very famous analogy or a comparison, I would say. Now, every comparison has certain aspects which can be equated. Now, I think there can't be a better example than this, which fits in so perfectly, so beautifully. We may have covered it in some context, but this is the source. So take a note of this verse. Now, the milk, the process of extracting butter from milk, the milk is compared to the human mind. And the mind, by its nature, just like the milk is fluid, is restless, is immature, it runs helter-skelter, it runs in different directions. It can't be kept at a place. It can't be, it is not matured. So the mind is like the milk, runs all over. So the first thing, the first process is you bring the milk to the lukewarm temperature, isn't it? You want to set the curd. What do? You need to bring the milk to lukewarm temperature. If the milk is too hot, or if you take the milk from the freezer too cold, the little culture or the curd you add into the milk is not going to help set the milk into curd. We are talking about how to extract butter from milk. As he says, every drop of milk has butter. But how do you go through the process of extraction? You go through the process first. You got to bring the milk to the right temperature. So if the milk is too hot, milk, as I've said, is the mind. If the mind is too hot, what does it mean? The mind is too hot means the mind is too preoccupied in the world, too caught up in the worldly passions. If it is torn by the trials and tribulations of the world, if the mind is too agitated because of the rajasic nature, it is unfit for the spiritual knowledge. So the mind can't be too hot because of the involvement carried away in the worldly activities, because of your ego and your ego conflicts with the world. When your mind is in the conflict with the world, you actually can't receive any knowledge, can you? You can't, you're not, mind is not ideal state to receive the higher knowledge, so unfit. Now, if the mind is from the cold storage, from the freezer, extreme tamas, that also is the mind which is immature, unfit. It is too cold of the experience of the world. It doesn't know what the world is. It has not tasted the joys of the world. It is not going to understand the comparative joy or the bliss you derive from the spiritual study. You still have the passions of the world, but you have no experience. So you're naive, you're immature, you don't have the experience of the world. You're also unfit, tamasic state. Either you're too caught up in the world, too busy, you have no time for this knowledge, you're burnt out by the worldly experiences, or you're too cold where you have no experience of the world at all. So the lukewarm temperature is the middle path in between the two. So the middle path in between the two, not too hot, not too cold, suggests that an ideal state of mind is where you had some experience of the world, suggesting a sattvic state where you have seen the world, you know what the world has to offer, you have the experiences, and you've also understood the relative futility in what the world has to offer. So a mind which has tasted the world and understands its limitations, such a mind is ideal. The ideal state of the mind is the lukewarm temperature of the mind. Now, it has nothing to do with the physical age, please. It is to do with the mental. You may say also, you may also want to interpret, too hot means too ripe. You can't be on your way to the hospital, you are in ICU and you want to say, please. In fact, I had a request that somebody said, somebody in the family is very, very old. Can you come and sing and chant and teach Bhagavad Gita to them? To which I said, I have great respect for your request, but I am not a Pandit to come and chant Bhagavad Gita. Now, it's good, no? Gita should be chanted. We should learn Bhagavad Gita, no? When? In the ICU, in the deathbed, you want to learn Bhagavad Gita too right, too hot. You have burnt your life with the worldly things and the fag end of your life, last moments of your life, you want to learn Gita, no use. Or you are too young and too immature, no experience of the world, and you want to learn Gita, you may, because you've heard so much of it, but you're not ready to grapple this knowledge. So the ideal state is not too young, not too old, not worn out by the world, or no experiences of the world, right in between. So if you say a person who is meeting the world, who needs to have the instructions to meet the world correctly, he wants to interact with the world, who wants to maintain right contact, who wants to bring the best out of his work, best out of his experiences, best out of his relationship. So this is meant for someone who has exuberance to live life, who has the energy, who has the purushatvam. It just gives you a direction how you want to plunge into that action. Eternal wisdom is a manual to life, and you want to live or embrace this manual when you have a life ahead of you, when you have a meaningful life ahead. You want to make your life meaningful and purposeful, you need to have this wisdom. That is what lukewarm means. And thereafter, what do you do with the lukewarm milk? Add a little bit of culture. Don't we add a little bit of spoon of culture, stir it up, and leave it overnight. So the amount of knowledge you need to add to that bowl of milk is just a little bit of culture. So the culture is the wisdom, is the knowledge received from the guru. Let's say the guru gives you the knowledge. You just need that much of knowledge to add into that into that milk, stir it up and leave it overnight. And by early morning, the curd should be set, isn't it? The yogurt is set. And if the milk was rich, and if you had the right proportion, you can even attempt by turning the bowl upside down. Don't try it. Huh? Don't try it. And if everything is spoiled, then you will be in for some music. So if it is ideally set, you go to if you have done it the right way, you have these mud pots, and you even go to these restaurants. And that if the milk is very thick and creamy, the yogurt is so strongly set, you have to actually scoop it out. It's like an ice cream. It's so strong, it's so solid. That symbolizes the transformation of a fluid mind, which has become mature and steady and established. It doesn't run like the restless mind here and there. And all the difference is the little culture you've added has made all the difference. The little knowledge, left it overnight, let the knowledge settle down, and then you get the matured mind. And what do you do once you have received the knowledge and the mind is mature? You do the churning of negation and assertion. When you go through the process of churning, like in the olden days, you used to find that they used to churn the curd, don't they? Early hours, even if you go to perhaps some traditional homes or into the villages, you find they churn the curd. So when you churn the curd, what do you get? You get the fresh cream or butter. And what do they do with the butter? Eat it. What a question, Guruji. All what we want is butter, no? So churn it and eat it. No. See, Rajima, you make a dish out of it. Huh?
No, Guruji, they normally heat it to make ghee.
But every day you don't get substantial butter, do you?
So you collect it and then
soak
it in water and change the water every time.
Yeah, so the little butter you get, what is that little butter you get?
It is the wisdom.
It is the little wisdom you have gathered because you have churned, reflected through manana, you got that. Now, as you rightly said, that wisdom you have gathered has to be stored in the cold pots of water. You know, you didn't have refrigerators or freezers those days. So how did they preserve the butter, which would have got spoiled if it's left in open? So they used to put the butter invariably is floating in the water. And every day they change the waters. And what is the water here? UK. What is the water? Why is the water have to be changed every day?
Namaste, Guruji.
Yes.
Is it the ignorance, Guruji, which has to be thrown out?
So one day you can keep it in ignorance, huh?
No.
So the wisdom is preserved, as it were. Otherwise, it would get stale, it gets spoiled.
Yes.
So whatever little wisdom you are gaining through your study and your reflection and the sadhana, it should be preserved.
Yes.
So there's another element of the water which comes in. Actually protects the wisdom.
No, Guruji.
In fact, okay, no issue, ma. Rajima, do you know what it is, since you mentioned of that which comes from churning?
Is it the external world, Guruji? So that you just keep negating and asserting and just keeping the wisdom
No,
fresh.
I'm talking the waters, the waters where the wisdom is preserved. And it has to be every day changed. Otherwise, it will spoil the wisdom
The
you've gathered.
mind and intellect?
Too many tries. You've finished your quota. Vaidyanathanji, very good to have you join us. Trust you're feeling.
I'm much better, Guruji. 5 weeks
So
after
nice.
the operation. I'm now
Yes.
on path to recovery.
Very good, sir. So good to see you, good to have you.
Thank you.
So if you've been following the line of thought, any attempt what
I was
suggests?
this satsang, a company of good people to preserve the wisdom. Otherwise, it gets diluted and you get distracted and you get derailed. Satsang.
Okay. Little broad you have answered, but I would take that. I would still take that. So that is important. You're right. Satsang. Yes, that would help preserve the wisdom. Yes. Okay. If we can go more to be more precise, actually, the cold waters symbolize the attitude of devotion, which is bhakti. So you must ensure there is devotion to the knowledge and enough devotion to the guru, so that there is no ahankar. You don't get into a conflict. You don't bring in your ego. And there's a fair chance, since you have not yet established in the wisdom and you've just been receiving higher knowledge, there's every possibility that you will get into an egoistic notion that I know. The ego may come into the process and disturb and unsettle the mind. So to ensure the ego doesn't come in, the arrogance doesn't come in, the devotion keeps the wisdom at check. It keeps it fresh. It doesn't become stale. It doesn't become non-relevant. So the broader thing you said, as Vaidyanathanji said, is the satsang. You can take it the satsang, but to be precise, you could understand it as the devotion, and you must ensure the devotion is always in check. You don't, if you're not in check, problem is your ego will creep in. You take it for granted. You should never ever take your guru for granted. I would not refer the context of discussion, but yesterday me and Hariji were there. We were driving somewhere after work, and Hariji started literally shouting at me because of he was so annoyed with a particular conversation I had. I will not refer to the context because it's not intending for any other purpose. And he got so annoyed, and he's in fact took apology of me and said, Guruji, I will not accept this. How can this go on? And he was purview to the discussion. Only both of us were there. And he said, I don't accept this and it's not right. And he said, I had to calm him down. It's all right, Hariji, it's fine, it's okay, it's understandable, it's fine, it's fine. And all he was saying is, how can they take you for granted? That's all he said. All he said was, how can they take you for granted? You are a guru, you must be kept at that pedestal. And I only relating to this. I don't know, I'm going to talk on this subject matter. There was an experience which happened yesterday. It just was less than a minute. Harish, am I right? I even remember, I'm sure you will very, very well recall. Isn't there a connection to what I'm saying? So you should never, ever take that for granted and let that come and interfere in your sadhana. The end result is the butter becomes stale. Your wisdom is lost because your wisdom, your devotion is not kept in check. And the context was also not ill-intended. It's not ill-intended. Nothing. That's why I had to tell you, it's not ill-intended. It's all. Sometimes we take it for granted. That's all I'm saying. So even when you go back to your home, the family or anybody out in the home are going through great sacrifices just to things be normal or things be available for you. Now, are you thankful and grateful for all that's happening, or have you taken for granted? If you have taken for granted, it starts. It has a certain repercussion. It has a certain consequence. But if you are ever thankful and grateful for whatever little that's happening, whatever that happens in your life, I tell you, it keeps it afresh, isn't it? Even in a relationship, any relationship, between a husband, spouse, between you and the family, you can't take the relationship for granted and expect the moment you become a taker in a relationship, the relationship becomes stale. So you got to have that spirit of giving, and you can't take that relationship for granted. And it becomes far more pronounced in this relationship between a shishya and a guru, because your knowledge or the wisdom that you're gathering has to be protected every step of the way. And that is represented by the waters which changed. And once you have gathered substantial wisdom, you put that wisdom, which is the butter, you put it under fire. Because butter is temporary, it gets spoiled if it's not kept in the right conducive environment. But once you put it on fire, that butter becomes ghee, and once it becomes ghee, it is permanent, it doesn't get spoiled. Butter gets spoiled, but ghee doesn't get spoiled. So butter is wisdom, the fire is meditation, ghee is self-realization. You have attained the ultimate state of self-realization, which once you have put the butter, which is the wisdom you have gathered, substantial wisdom, when you put it under the fire of meditation, the wisdom gets transformed into the ultimate state of self-realization. So meditation is the fire, which is nididhyasana, and The ghee you extract, which is permanent. You don't have to put ghee in the fridge. Even in your homes, you leave the ghee on your kitchen platforms. But the butter is not left in the kitchen platform. It gets spoiled. It's outside. Ghee represents the permanent state of self-realization. So how the milk, which is fluid, goes through a certain process of transformation, and you can extract the butter, which is the wisdom, or ghee, which is realization. So from a fluid mind of the milk to a established or a realized transcended mind, which is realization. The process is so simple and yet parallel to the philosophy which we learn. So the mind must be in the right state, not too worn out by the world, not immature of the experience of the world. The right ideal state, lukewarm. A little culture means a little wisdom. You don't need tons of knowledge. A little knowledge from the guru. Leave it overnight. Reflect early morning, which is churning the curd. You get a little butter. Keep it in the pots of water of devotion. And once you have substantial wisdom, the mind from an extroverted becomes introverted. Then you subject it through the process of dharana and dhyana, which is open-eyed meditation, and then you get what is ghee, which is self-realization. It is so apt and complete. So amazing how the Guru Adi Shankaracharya could have originally conceived it. He doesn't talk of the ghee here, but he just says, just like butter pervades milk, the Brahman is everywhere, but you got to go through the process of extracting that butter from every drop of milk. It is beautiful. If you carefully examine it, re-examine it, it's fascinating. All right. Rajima got every aspect of it. I thought you were missing something. You got it? Or what it is that you missed? All okay? All right, perfect. Right.